weekend, the White House released a college scorecard designed to help high school students pick colleges based on the average income of graduates and the average size of loan payments. But my next guest says the report is deeply flawed and maybe more misleading than helpful. Imagine that. Something politicized from the White House? What? Brian Brenberg is an associate professor of economics at the King's College right here in New York City. Brian, welcome back.
Great to be here.
So let's discuss this because it looks to me to be a heaping pile of malarkey nonsense. How is this scorecard supposed to work?
Well, what it's supposed to do is help students understand if I pick a college, how much debt am I going to have on average, and how much money am I going to make afterward, and am I going to graduate, which are all really good things for high school students to know.
Yeah.
And in some ways, the report does a good job. I mean, there is some really interesting data in this around which colleges students go to where they actually pay back their student loans. And in fact, there are hundreds of colleges where more than half of the students aren't paying back their student loans, even 6-7 years after they enroll. So there's some good data there.
All right, so what you're looking for is a college where you're going to get a good education, where you're not going to have to pay a lot of money, and where you're almost guaranteed to have a good paying job in 10 years. But the problem is, where did they get the data about people's long-term employment history and what they're actually making over the course of 10 years?
So the data is really not all that long-term. They're looking at earnings data maybe 10 years after graduation tops. So it's a short-term picture, getting the data from the IRS, getting the data from the Department of Ed on the credit side.
So we're working together on this
Yes,
scorecard.
I think the real problem with the data is the way they're framing this. If you go to the website for this scorecard, it looks like an advertisement for financial aid, for federal financial aid. There's links everywhere for how do you borrow. And I think that's...
And who does that benefit directly?
Right, and this is the problem, because on the one hand, the data is telling you we've got a real problem with student debt. On the other hand, here's a scorecard, borrow some money. Wait a second, what are we talking about here? So I think they're framing this the wrong way, and they're actually, in sort of an unintended way, I think, exacerbating the problem that they're identifying with the data.
Is there a better way of getting this information? Because obviously, if you're a college junior or senior and you're sitting down and you're trying to figure out where to apply, where you can go based on your GPA and your test scores and everything else, is there a better way of finding that information?
I think the point is use this as one piece of all the different data that you're going to accumulate when you're looking at colleges. You can't, here's the problem with the data. It tells you how much students earn 6 years after they start college.
That's
great, but that's
people,
an average.
And that's only people who've borrowed money.
Now, and that's a sizable chunk, but the problem is that's an average. So what's the difference between a literature major and an engineer? The difference is going to be huge. If you're a student and you're not looking into the data, reading into the data, you might miss that. So I think it's not at a fine enough level of detail to really be a good guide to choosing a college.
Well, I've said this, I don't know how many times on the show, maybe 100. Maybe college isn't the best choice for every single person who's graduating from high school. Maybe that's where we have it wrong as a society. And it makes us a little bit lazy to just assume that, and you pointed out that, yes, if you go to college, you have a chance of making $1 million more in earnings over a lifetime. But maybe that's because people who go to college are the types of people who are just going to make more money.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest problems with the website, is that's the first stat you see after you get the links for the scorecard. That's the first stat. You're going to make $1 million more. That's just not true. Correlation does not equal causation. It may be that college helps you get a job, but it may be that smart people just tend to go to college and they make a lot of money anyway. We're perpetuating a myth, and I think that's, again, it's framing college the wrong way. As you said, college may not be the right choice, but we're kind of making it the only choice with scorecards that portray the data this way.
And it doesn't necessarily make you smart. I mean, people who golf tend to make more money than people who don't golf. Does that mean that everyone should become a golfer? No, that's not necessarily the case. That's not the necessary conclusion.
Yeah, and there's so much anecdotal data and even some research data that really calls into question what students are learning when they go to college. So again, the scorecard, I think, just doesn't provide a fine enough level of detail to help you really make a decision about which college should I go to earn the kind of living that I want to earn. It's helpful data, but it's not complete, and I think the federal government really is framing it the wrong way with these $1 million myth stats.
$1 million myths. It's a lot of nonsense, and if anyone is unsure, don't waste the time. Don't go to college. Brian Brenberg, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here.
I love it. Always clarity in his world.